It was the serpents that awakened her. Oh, I mean, her senses had been heightened by all of the years of living in the caverns. But the serpents, oh, they were connected directly to Medusa's scalp, and the serpents could detect the footfall of a mouse from 1,000 paces away. This was not a mouse's footfall, though. It was the footstep of a man, and as soon as Medusa realized it, she sat up in bed. It was another one, another hero that had come to her island, come to make his name, come to slay the monster known as Medusa. She hurried up from her bed, hurried out into the hallway. Early on, shortly after the curse had been dropped upon her, she had made the mistake of allowing one of those would-be heroes to get too close. He had actually made it to the bedroom doorway before her gaze met his, and he was forever turned to stone. And it had taken several days of careful chipping and maneuvering to remove that stone statue and actually be able to escape her room once more. No, that was not going to happen again. She would meet him. And hopefully she would meet him close enough to that chamber that she had set up, her chamber of heroes, where stone statues were marked along the wall for all of those would-be heroes who had come, whose gaze had fallen upon hers, and who had been turned to stone in the process. She worked her way out into the hallway, the serpents on her hair, reaching out and feeling in all directions. The drip, drip, drip of the water coming down from the ceiling of the cavern like it always did. The occasional roar of the surf, whoosh, off in the distance. The surf, the ocean that she had not seen for years, nor the sunshine or anything of the outside, for monsters must live below the ground. As she walked along, she realized that there was another sound, though. She expected the standard footfall of a boot on the ground of the cavern, but this was different. This was a shuffling sound. In addition to the drip, drip, drip and the whoosh, there was a whoosh, 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 and her curiosity got the best of her. She decided to catch a glimpse of this hero long before their eyes would meet and his fate would be sealed. And so as she slowly rounded the corner, she saw what made that whoosh, whoosh sound. For he was stepping backwards and sliding his feet along the ground. Oh no, this was different. He was seeing where he was going by holding a shield up over his shoulder and gazing into that. She nodded. He was clever. Perhaps he was going to try to kill her by not meeting her gaze, but by somehow fighting with her reflection. And as she thought that, something else caught her eye. She looked again at that shield that he held up over his shoulder, and she saw something moving there, and she looked closer. And everything changed. There was no more drip, drip, drip from the ceiling. There was no more whoosh of the surf, and he had stopped moving entirely, to the point that Medusa thought that perhaps she had caught her own reflection and maybe turned herself to stone. But then she felt the serpents moving around her head, and she was able to move her own fingers, and she said, no, that was not true at all. What had stopped for some brief period of time was time itself. She gazed more closely then at that highly polished mirror that he held, expecting to catch a glimpse of the monster that she was, but what she saw in that mirror instead was an image of a younger woman, an idealistic woman, a woman approaching the temple of Athena. It was herself at a much younger age, and she realized that she was gazing into the past. As she looked upon that image of herself, she saw her going through the ordeals once again, all of the training, all of the rituals, until the day of her highest pride, when she had been made a priestess of Athena. Oh, but the story did not stop then. And as she feared, she then saw his face, the face that she had hoped never to see again. Oh, she was thankful in that moment that all she saw was a reflection, that all she had was visual, because to hear his words again would have been pure torture. His words of flattery, his words of praise, his lies. When he had taken what he wanted from her, he left her broken on the floor of the temple. And this is where Athena herself found her. This is where Athena herself had laid the curse upon her, had made the serpents grow out where before there had been beautiful ringlets of hair, had turned her into the monster that to look upon a man would turn him to stone. And Medusa had run, she had gone back to the island from which she had come, back to the island of the Gorgons. But the men did not leave her alone. They came, sometimes a couple a week, sometimes not one another for months, but still they came, and they all sought the same thing. They all sought to make their name by killing the monster, and she saw them then in the mirror, that crowd of men who came one after another, turned to statues, her chamber growing ever larger. But then she realized, as she wiped one of the snakes out of her eyes, that the image in the shield was doing the same. She was no longer in the past, she was in the present, and she looked closer, more forward, wanting to catch a glimpse of that horrendous monster. She did not see a monster. What she saw was the same face, that same face of that younger girl, a little older, a little wiser, more etched with lines, a little gray from not seeing the sunshine for so many years, but still her face, not a monster at all. And she heard, perhaps her own voice, perhaps the voice of a goddess mixed with her own voice. That voice rose in her head, and she realized in that moment that Athena had not cursed her at all. Athena had given her a weapon with which to fight back. And all those years, all those men who had come, they had come to do her harm. And she had used that weapon to her best effect. And in that realization, she realized the strength that she carried within herself, and the image in the mirror changed once more. She saw sunshine and blue sky. And she listened to the voice, and it told her what to do next, but she already knew. She looked away from the mirror, and once again the drip, drip, drip came from the ceiling. The rush of the surf came from outside. The hero shuffled backwards towards her, and Medusa bent down and bared her neck for him, praying only that his aim be true and his sword be sharp. Her prayer was answered. And as the head of Medusa, as the head of the monster rolled across the floor, that which Medusa had become galloped up the passageway, out towards the exit, raced towards the opening in the cavern, and spread its wings and flew into the sun. The mortal monster Medusa, no more. The immortal flying horse Pegasus, forevermore.